Number 10. Pompeii graffiti. What do Romans and Zoomers have in common? Probably their love for weird and semi-unfunny memes. Yes, even thousands of years in the past, people were leaving all sorts of tasteful messages on the walls for all to see. Insults, compliments, but more interestingly, threats. Most of these are obviously jovial in nature, but there is one that does stand out as interesting. The message reads, "To the one defecating here, beware of the curse. If you look down on this curse, may you have an angry Jupiter for an enemy." Seems silly enough, right? Well, it is, until you learn that it was found at Pompeii, the city buried by a volcano. Sounds like a fairly wrathful act, eh? Seems like Jupiter was being a bit of a party pooper. Number 9. Hans Holbein's The Ambassadors. Hans Holbein is a classic artist, but one of his most famous works stands out as a grim omen. In 1533, Holbein would be commissioned to portray ambassadors Jean de Dinfy of France and Georges de Sèvres of Lavaur. This work is an excellent piece, but it includes an enigmatic secret, a strangely proportioned skull. There are numbers of theories as to why this was included, one of the most popular coming from Oscar Bachmann and Pascal Grenier, who suggest that the skull is meant to contrast the beauty and value found within life against the grandeur of death. Holbein would pass almost exactly 1 decade later, which arguably completes the implication of this message in its entirety. Number 8. The Voyager messages. The Voyager deep space program helped NASA further its understanding of the solar system with absolutely breathtaking images of the universe that were sent back to Earth. However, those messages weren't the only thing that the Voyagers were meant to carry. Inside each probe is a golden phonograph disc titled The Sounds of Earth, which include several greetings, sounds of whales, a crying baby, waves on a shoreline, music from a scatterplot of important musicians from around the world, and greetings in around 55 different languages. While this seems like a friendly handshake from one part of the universe to another, the question must be asked, what will find this disc? What will they think of us? And what will they do next? The Voyagers are still out there, and they are expected to no longer be able to transmit anything to us in roughly around 2036. Which probably means that if anything does find them, we won't be getting a warning until they're here. Number 7. The Mayan calendar. Portents of doom are common enough in history. However, 2012 was an interesting year for such fears, as the turn of a new millennium caused a number of people to become absolutely certain that the world would end. To justify their claims, they looked to the past, and one message seemed to leave people more certain than others. Now, let's be clear, the Mayans didn't actually make this calendar. That would have to be attributed to the early Mesoamericans, who termed the end of a period of the time as the Baktun. Baktun 13 was the end of a particularly large period, and when lined up with our calendar, it matched up alongside the date of December 2012. So, was the message true? It was fun at the time, but after the date passed, the real horror was revealed as people admitted to selling their possessions and homes with the expectation that they just wouldn't need them anymore. All because of a calendar period ending in a way that most computer technicians would just describe as stack overflow. Like, your car doesn't explode when you max out the mileage counter, it just resets to 0. So the terror here was more that people actually believed this crap, just because the Mesoamericans didn't make a Baktun 14. Jeez. Number 6. Qin Shi Huang's Meteor. So in 211 BC, the Qin dynasty was in full swing and everyone was having a great time, suffering under the rule of their tyrannical overlord Qin Shi Huang. Suddenly, a meteor fell from the sky, landing in the province of Dongjun. Upon inspection, the meteor was revealed to have been inscribed with the words, "The first emperor will die, and his land will be divided." Whether or not this was an elaborate hoax or not, the emperor was paranoid enough to demand that the writer come forward, and when no one did, he had everyone who lived in the area executed. The funny thing is, a year later it came true. Qin Shi Huang died, and while China remained somewhat unified, the Qin dynasty fell only 3 years later. And soon after that, the Han dynasty took over, ending the Qin dynasty's short reign. Unfortunately, the meteor was shattered, so this brilliant moment has been permanently lost to time. Number 5. Egyptian tomb curses. Egypt. One of the greatest civilizations known to mankind. Thank goodness that a bunch of Europeans decided to rob the graves of their ancestors, or else they'd have been really bored or something. However, when these losers decided to pop open those tombs, likely searching for gold, they instead found a cavalcade of curses. Some of these read as such: "Any ruler who shall do evil or wickedness to this coffin, may his heir not inherit. As for all men who shall enter my tomb, there will be judgment. I shall cast the fear of myself into him. And all who enter this tomb will make evil against it. May the crocodile be against them in the water, and the snakes against them on land. May the hippopotamus be against them in water, and the scorpion on land." Aside from being incredibly cool and threatening, these grave robbers were also plagued with visions of ghosts, and many died, usually from disease-carrying insects and violent animals. Who could have seen that coming? Number 4. The Ring of Senesenius. This ring was discovered by a farmer plowing his land in 1785, but wouldn't be brought to archaeologists until years later. Made from 12 grams of gold, the ring contains an inscription in Latin which reads "Senescene vivus in Deum," which kind of translates to "live in God," although the ring apparently has some spelling errors, so whatever, it doesn't matter. A tablet was discovered which was inscribed within a curse, claiming that whoever removed the ring would never again be in good health until it was returned to Nodens. The archaeologist who excavated the site decided to call upon a close friend to research the actual location of Nodens, a professor at Oxford named J.R.R. Tolkien. That's right, baby. This little curse inspired the Lord of the Rings. Number 3. The Serbian Skull Tower. Signs are very effective means of ensuring through symbology that people can understand what they mean even without speaking the language of the people that they were made by. For instance, red is generally the color that is universally used to denote that everyone should stop. And skulls usually denote that everyone in the area should probably turn around and leave. There's no better example of this than the Skull Tower, located in Serbia. Apparently, in 1804, there was a Serbian uprising against the Ottomans, an uprising that failed in spectacular fashion. After their battle, the governor of the area decided that the easiest way to ensure no one tried it again was to create a tower out of the skulls of the rebels, sending a very clear message to anyone with seditious thoughts. Just try it. Number 2. The Czech Republic Warning Stones. As the world is racked with an oncoming ecological disaster that you should be as terrified of as I am, artifacts have been uncovered which have revealed some fascinating messages. Prior to the invention of the internet, the residents of the area had the idea to inscribe messages on stones, which would warn people of incoming disasters such as droughts, famines, bad harvests, food shortages, and just incoming hunger in general. This last part led to their being dubbed as the Czech Hunger Stones, with dates going back as far as 1417. Some quotes that can be found on these messages are deeply disturbing, such as, "When you see me, weep." I guess the mourning stones are doing their job pretty well this time around. Number 1. Charles Maffel's final message and Jeremiah Burke's final message. Messages in bottles are some of those neat little things that are synonymous with the adventures of pirates and other seafaring individuals. These messages aren't exactly as whimsical. In 1909, the vessel Waratah set sail from South Africa to Australia, but went missing at sea. Numerous people attempted to claim that they'd received letters in bottles from drowned sailors, and while most were clearly fake, one did prove to be genuine, matching with the sailor's handwriting and the time with which he would have had to write it. The message reads, "Top heavy. One side awash. Goodbye, mother and father." Signed, Charles Maffel, Greaser. Several years later, a similar incident would occur with the sinking of the Titanic and the discovery of a letter sent from Jeremiah Burke, reading, "From Titanic. Goodbye all. Burke of Glanmire, Cork." The message was written on a scrap of paper, then placed inside an empty bottle of holy water given to the man by his mother prior to the voyage. She died before she could read it.
Starting off this list in our number 10 spot, we have Kate McCormick. This tombstone truly leaves one of the darkest and saddest stories I have ever heard. This stone reads, "Kate McCormick, seduced and pregnant by her father's friend, unwed, she died from abortion, her only choice, abandoned in life and death by family, with but a single rose from her mother, buried only through the kindness of unknown benefactors. Died February 1876, age 21, victim of an unforgiving society. Have mercy on us." The story of what happened to Kate is obviously quite clear in the message and is truly an absolute nightmare. A trip to the cemetery is always a bit of a grim experience, but when you see something like this, it really does take it to a new level. All we can do is hope that wherever Kate is now, she is resting in peace and know that we haven't forgotten her or her story. In our number 9 spot today, we have Herman Harband. Herman decided to have a headstone made ahead of time before his death, but didn't even actually end up getting buried there, which is quite interesting. Herman had a message he wanted to get across, however, and he certainly did just that. It's actually a bit of a sad and terrifying story, and it really shows the place Herman was in when he made it. The stone reads, "Herman Harband, born in 1918. My wife Eleanor Arthur of Queens, New York, lived like a princess for 20 years, traveling the world with the best of everything. When I went blind, she tried to poison me, took all my money, all my medication, and left me in the dark alone and sick. It's a miracle I escaped. I won't see her in heaven because surely she's going to hell." Herman absolutely went off, but it definitely seems like he kind of had a right to, because that story is simply terrible. Good news is that Herman ended up getting remarried and he lived a happy and very long life until he passed away in 2011. In our number 8 spot today, we have Francis and Mary Huntrudes. This stone is one of the less sad ones on this list today, thankfully, and while still haunting, it's in more of a poetic or beautiful way. Or at least I think so. This tombstone is from Francis and Mary Huntrudes, and their stone tells the story of their lives and their love. It reads about how they were both born on the same day in 1600. They were married on their shared birthday. They had 12 children together, and then they both passed away on their birthdays just shortly after turning 80. That is quite some love story, and honestly, what are the chances? But the final 2 lines of the text on the tombstone really sum up the story so perfectly. They read, "Each tender heart so fit a match, surely could never be. Both in their lives and in their deaths agree." Maybe this match was simply a serendipitous coincidence, but I definitely would like to think otherwise. In our number 7 spot today, we have the Tazacorte Martyrs Memorial. This one is a little different from the others on this list today for a couple reasons. Firstly, these are tombstones for many individuals, and secondly, because there isn't a message left with them that I want to talk about, but instead just the entire eerie nature of the whole situation. This may appear as a gravesite that has been flooded, but it's actually an underwater memorial. In 1570, a group of Jesuit missionaries boarded a ship from Portugal to Brazil. A French pirate named Jacques Souris boarded the ship along with them, and from there, he and his men took the lives of all of the priests. Some of them even had their limbs cut off before they were thrown overboard. The lone survivor of this day was the ship's cook. The memorial features 40 crosses for each of the lives lost, and it is located near the area of the massacre, which is close to La Palma Island, 18 meters below the surface. I might be alone in this belief, but I think that there is just something extremely haunting about an underwater memorial. In our number 6 spot today, we have Jeremy Bibb Balasag. This tombstone goes hand in hand with an absolutely insane story about Jerry's life. The short of it is that Jerry, who is a professional wrestler, ended up vanishing after getting in trouble with the law. He was wanted for charges of fraud, and while no one knew his whereabouts for 6 months, when his mother picked up a magazine one day which featured the victims of the horrible cultist Jonestown massacre, she sadly saw her son's picture alongside all of the others. This led to there being a tombstone, of course, made for Jerry, although his body would have been already buried in California. So, this all happened in 1978, but let's flash forward to 1990. In that year, a man named Ricky A. Weta was arrested for attempting to take someone's life. He was fingerprinted upon his arrest, and who would have thought, Ricky turned out to be none other than the presumed dead Jerry. This whole story was, of course, huge national news because how could this have possibly happened? In the end, Jerry was caught and brought to justice a few separate times, before he passed away in a prison in Nicaragua from a heart attack that was brought on by the heat in the prison, which is a whole separate issue we'll have to save for another video. In our number 5 spot today, we have Martha Jane Mary McCune. Mary's tombstone tells the tale of her final days, and it truly feels like it is something out of a horror movie. Mary was born around 1838 and passed away most definitely not long enough after in 1855. She was pregnant at the time, and the writing on her tombstone really says it all, so I might as well just read it to you. Bitten by rabid coyote, developed rabies, became violent, was smothered with feather bed. Apparently at the time of being bit by this coyote, Mary's husband was out of town for work, and by the time he got back, his wife had already passed away and been buried, and he had absolutely no idea that any of this was happening, which is extremely tragic. It was so horrible that this was the way that Mary's life was taken, and it definitely makes you grateful for modern medicine, although rabies still manages to claim the lives of around 59,000 people per year. In our number 4 spot today, we have Mona Harold Vanny. This tombstone reads as a letter written to Mona from her children, but it certainly is not what you'd be expecting. Instead of the nice and lovely message you might think, Mona's 3 children detail what an absolute nightmare she was to them growing up. The stone reads, "To our mother. You spent your life expressing animosity for nearly every person you encountered, including your children. Within hours of his death, you even managed to declare your husband of 57 years an unsuited spouse or father. Hopefully you are now insulated from all of the dissatisfaction you found in human relationships." Wow, they really did not hold back one little bit. If it makes you feel better, the message that was left on their father's stone was much more kind and loving. I guess one thing is clear, and that is that Buddy, Jackie, and Mike were not messing around. In our number 3 spot today, we have Charles H. Salmon. Charles' tombstone tells the story of a medical malpractice that ended up leading to his death. Basically what happened is that Charles fell ill with a cold and was given medicine to help treat it. Little did he know, but he wasn't given the proper medicine, but was instead given morphine. When he went back to the doctor to explain that he wasn't getting any better, they also gave him morphine, and this caused him to end up overdosing on the drug. It truly is not quite clear how this could have possibly happened, and I'm not sure if Charles' family ever saw any form of justice for this terrible mistake, but it really is just such an awful story. In our number 2 spot today, we have Andrew J. Olsak. Andrew's tombstone is really straight to the point, but it is one of the saddest we have on today's list. His stone reads, "Abandoned in old age by wife and children. May God be more understanding and merciful." There really is a lot to unpack here. First, I have so many questions as to what happened and what led to this abandonment. Second, I have to know if this is his way of sticking it to his family who he claims abandoned him, or if this is more of just a simple goodbye. Either way, whatever the details are behind this story, coming upon this message in a graveyard would certainly make your heart sink a bit, and definitely be one of those things that you just remember. In our number 1 spot today, we have Leo Matlovich. Leo's tombstone is one that is certainly not easily forgotten. This stone doesn't even say his name, but the reason for that will become quite clear. First, we have to tell Leo's story. Leo was a war hero in the Air Force, and he challenged the policy of homosexuality in the military. Through Leo's bravery and activism, he was able to actually change a few things for gay people serving in the military, the effects of which can still be seen today. Despite Leo receiving both a Bronze Star and a Purple Heart for his service, in the end he was still discharged for being a gay man. He ended up passing away in San Francisco in 1988 after complications from HIV/AIDS. His tombstone reads, "A gay Vietnam veteran. While I was in the military, they gave me a medal for killing 2 men and a discharge for loving one." There is nothing I could possibly say that would be more profound than that, so I'll just end off this point by saying Leo and all the things he did and fought for will truly never be forgotten.
Dead girlfriend's Facebook message comes onto this list at number 10. This story comes to us from Reddit. Nathan says that his girlfriend Emily died in a tragic car accident back in 2012. Approximately 1 year later, Emily returned from the dead to communicate with Nathan through Facebook. Is this real life right now? According to Nathan, only him and Emily's mom have access to her Facebook. Take a look for yourself. Here are some screenshots of the Facebook messages sent from beyond the grave. If that wasn't creepy enough, Emily started to tag herself in photos in the background. But wait, there's more. Emily even took a picture of Nathan and sent it to him. I don't know about you guys, but I'm thinking Nathan wasn't the greatest boyfriend, and she should probably deactivate his Facebook account because this is just way too much to handle. Next up on our list, at number 9, we have phone calls after death. Let's go back to September 12, 2008, when a commuter train that was carrying 225 people collided with the freight train and crashed. 135 people were injured, 25 people unfortunately died. One of the people that lost their lives that day was 49-year-old Charles E. Peck. He had 3 children and he was engaged to his fiancée Andrea Katz. Well, once the crash was broadcasted, his fiancée was driving to the train station to pick him up with his parents and siblings. His body was recovered from the wreckage 12 hours after the incident, but for the first 11 hours his cell phone made several calls to his loved ones. It called his son, brother, stepmother, sister, and his fiancée. In total, his family received 35 phone calls that night, but when they answered, all they heard was static. When they tried to call back, it went straight to voicemail. It was later discovered that he had died on the impact, but long after he died, his cell phone somehow continued to reach out to his loved ones, almost saying like, "Hey, I'm okay." Maybe he was trying to reach out to them one last time beyond the grave. It's really scary and creepy when you think about it, but imagine just having that one more opportunity to listening to your loved ones that have passed away. So because of the phone calls, the rescue team was able to find his body, but they were never able to find his cell phone. I mean, what a creepy ending to that story. What happened to the cell phone? Who was making the phone calls? A warning message from beyond the grave takes us to number 8. On September 20th, 1988, a man received a very unexpected phone call. When he answered his cell, it was a familiar voice that sounded far away. She said, "Please be careful." He tried to ask who it was, but instead the ghostly voice repeated its warning 3 more times before hanging up. The phone number was unlisted, but he said that the voice sounded like his mother. But she had been dead for almost 2 years, so that's a big problem. 2 days after this scary phone call, he went to visit his father in a facility. The staff warned him that his father had become very violent, and maybe if he talked to him it would help his father. Well, once he got into the room, his father grabbed a knife from the drawer and tried to attack his son. If it wasn't for that phone call, he might not have been paranoid or acted as quickly as he did. Young boy sends his parents signals after death, and this takes us into number 7. Ray Dow Jr. was only 10 years old when he died in an accident while riding his bike. He took a sharp turn onto a steep hill, and that led him into a cemetery. His parents believe that their son is sending them signals that led them to know that he's okay and that he has come to terms with his death. Here are some of the signs. On the day that he died, his mom had took off one of his artworks from the fridge because she wanted to frame it. She placed it underneath another painting of Jesus Christ in the clouds, so the family believes that this was a premonition of his death. The family also says that when they visit the place where he died, they can feel his spirit. One day they brought flowers and a balloon to where he died, and a butterfly landed on the balloon and then moved to an angel statue. The family believes that he's communicating with them and he wants them to move on with their lives and be happy, and to let them know that he's okay. And now at number 6, we have a voice message from someone's grandpa. On April 12, 2011, a scary phone call was uploaded onto YouTube. The uploader claims that this is a ghostly phone message from his deceased grandpa who died a few months earlier. Let's have a listen.
Saved message.
Okay, if that's truly real, that's pretty freaky. Is anyone else completely freaked out? Because I am. The phone call only rang once, and the uploader said that he instantly got a voicemail notification. People in the comment section said they can also hear, love you, and help me. I mean, what do you guys hear? Grandmother attempts to call her grandson from beyond the grave, and this brings us to number 5. A musician by the name of Carl Uphoff claims that he was called by his grandmother who had died 2 days earlier. His grandmother was deaf, but she also called him on the phone to ask if he was even there, though she couldn't hear the answer. One night he got a call while he was hanging out with his friends. On the other end of the line, he said that he heard his grandmother's voice, and when he asked how she was able to call when she was dead, the woman hung up. Over the next several days, there was a ton more calls like this, and each time he asked her who she was or how she was able to call him. This went on for quite a bit until the call suddenly stopped. Haunted text messages climbs up onto this list at number 4. A man claims that his house is haunted by an evil poltergeist. Also claims that he is being haunted by text messages from his dead wife. There are reports that the poltergeist will pull their bed covers off while they sleep. The house had a terrible odor, and you can also feel something or someone breathing in your ears. If that wasn't enough to deal with, the man also claimed that his dead wife is haunting him through text messages. Just after she died, he got a missed phone call on his phone, but it didn't ring. The call was from the house phone, but there wasn't anyone home. So how can that be possible? Once he was inside, it smelled like cigarettes, which his wife used to smoke, and he could smell her perfume as if she was like right there. Since then, he had been getting messages which he believed are from his wife. He said that she always had her phone on her, and they even buried her with her phone. There had been messages with information that only his wife would have known, but there was no number. I mean, would you guys find this comforting or creepy? I mean, comforting in the sense of like, you're still able to communicate with your wife, but she's dead, but it's kind of creepy and scary. Up next, number 3, we have some mysterious emails sent from beyond the grave. Jack Folsey suddenly died at the age of 32 years old from a heart arrhythmia. But 5 months after he died, some of his loved ones started to receive mysterious emails from his account. These emails would mention private conversations that they had with him just before his death. So no one else could possibly have known what was said except for Jack. One of his closest friends said that he got an email notification from Jack. The message said, "Did you hear me? I'm at your house. Clean your effing attic." His friend said he turned ghost white because the two of them just had a conversation in his attic, and Jack had teased him about how messy and how dusty it was in there. No one else would have known about that conversation. Another one of his friends got a strange email from Jack about him breaking his ankle. This happened after Jack was dead. So I guess Jack is still watching over his friends, and he's still able to send them some comforting yet creepy emails. Number 2 brings us to a deceased grandma who was sending texts after death. I didn't know that grandmas were even capable of sending text messages. I mean, I just taught my dad how to send a few texts, and I shouldn't have done that because now he's texting me too much. All jokes aside, a woman is claiming that her grandmother is sending her text message after she died from cancer back in 2011. The granddaughter begged the cell phone company to not give away her grandmother's number, which they promised to do. But 3 years later, she was completely shocked when she looked down at her phone and saw a text from beyond the grave. A text from her grandmother. The message said, "I'm watching over you. You'll get through this. You'll be alright." She remembered that her grandmother was buried with her cell phone, so a lot of disturbing images ran through her head. What if she's there and texting in her grave? First she thought that someone might have dug up her grandmother's grave, got a hold of her cell phone, and now they're trolling. Or is it possible that her grandmother's spirit was able to text? And now topping this list, in at number 1, we have a daughter who sent her mother an apology after death. A teenager girl from New Mexico had a fight with her mother and she left the house fueled with anger. Shortly after the fight, the teenager was involved in a devastating car crash. She was rushed to the hospital, but she was pronounced dead on arrival. A couple of hours after her death, her mother received a text message from her. It said, "Sorry mom, forgive me." I mean, that just gives me the chills. If that's in all honesty a true story, it's unbelievable, but it's scary. Oh, and did I mention that the crime scene was being cleaned up? They recovered her phone, but it was completely melted and destroyed, which makes this story even more freaky, because how was that text message even sent?